Welcome to the Possibility Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton, aka Possibility Man. We are committed to bringing you guests who strive to better people's lives and serve as a force for good in the world. Today, we have one of those angels, Anna Debenham. Anna is a former business coach and is the founder of the Insight Alliance based in Portland, Oregon. Since 2019, Anna and her team have been pointing adults to discover their innate wellness and well-being. Anna, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to be here.
Okay, great. Look, I've noted that you work out of Portland, and I think you're now in your offices right now today, having this interview with me. But you hail from a different shore. Is that right?
It is, yes. I'm English, and I was living in London before I moved to Portland.
Okay, look, I'm curious about your background. So can you give us just a glimpse into your personal biography before you came to these shores? Who is Anna Debenham?
That's a good question. I feel like I've had about 10 different lives. I think, as it pertains to my work now, well, first of all, I've had a lot of different jobs, careers, trainings, all of which I thought was, very, very disparate and all over the place. But now I'm doing what I do. I've realized that it was all necessary, and it kind of created this web, or this kind of amazing kind of melange of education and life experience that I feel like has really helped me to get where I'm at today. So I come from England. I initially actually did body work and shiatsu, and was really interested in somatic psychotherapy and like how the body and the emotions like connect, and how we express ourselves and our emotions through our body. And that kind of actually morphed into and ending up doing my degree in culture, ecology, and sustainable community, which that's another whole long story about why that happened. But got into kind of, community and the environment. And but in the background of that, I was working a lot in addiction. I'd suffered many years with an eating disorder. And so a lot of my work initially was really looking for a solution to my own issues, to find peace of mind for myself. And so it kind of took me in various different directions, because at the time I thought there was something wrong with me that needed to get fixed. So I was on a constant search to find something that would, cure my eating disorders and various kind of compulsive behaviors, and also the kind of craziness that would go on in my mind. And it took me on all sorts of different directions and different trainings and stuff like that. And then I finally, when I was in London, came across, this understanding of the mind, the principles that really felt like true to me. Like there was something inside of me that felt everything I'd ever done that was looking outside of myself to find the solution. I actually realized that there was nothing wrong with me, and the solution to everything I've been looking for lies within.
Okay,
and so
I want to come back to that. That's okay. But you mentioned, though, that you had a personal struggle with an issue. You described it as an eating disorder. So let me ask you, did you, because of that eating disorder, did you ever become like your accuser? Did you ever blame yourself for that behavior?
It's so interesting, Stephen, because I've got such a different relationship with it now than I used to have, that it's hard to even kind of, in a way, hard to remember like my relationship with it back then. I mean, I remember having a massive inner critic and being really, I spent so much of my time, trying to fix it and trying to figure it out. And then I'd fall off and then I'd beat myself up because I couldn't quite figure it out. And it was very secretive. So I'd never actually went to get any support because I thought that I could always sort it out for myself. And so there was that constant kind of battle with myself to try and to try and heal on my own.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I ever found myself as an accuser. I just kind of, I had such a strong judge and inner critic, and that I wasn't good enough, and I wasn't this, and I wasn't that, and all the things that, and that just kind of all melded together. Now, when I look back and I think about it, I think that it was, it actually really helped me out as my biggest ally.
Okay.
Because it allowed me to look into myself, because I knew that there was something that I was missing. So I can look at it now and I can feel really grateful that I wouldn't change it. I mean, 25 years, bulimia, it took its toll and on me. But it was my guide in a way to me kind of moving towards a more healthy life, that maybe, who knows, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if that hadn't been there. So it kind of always came full circle in that respect.
I see. So, but I find this fascinating, because what you're telling me is that because you work with, we'll get to the population of people you work with in a moment, but you tell them about change and their resilience, as I said in the introduction. But you yourself has had experience with change, so you know that people can change. Is that about right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And and it's interesting, even that my relationship with the idea of change has changed, because actually coming from that, this is something that the youth taught me that we work with. The idea that we need to change rather than the idea that we elevate. Because they'd be like, I don't need to, I like myself, I don't want to change, and it's like, actually, do you know what? That there is an assumption when we talk about change that there's something wrong with us as we are right now. And I really learned that from them. And it really changed my perspective on the idea of change versus elevating, because it's like, I see people elevate. I see people kind of almost like shedding all the crap, and then coming back to their true nature, coming back to themselves. So it's like their game just raises, right? Their game raises, and they come back to themselves. And so I definitely have seen change in people, and I've seen, people waking up, and I see people elevate to kind of become, like amazing versions of themselves.
Understood. Okay. So now you were about to tell us about your discovery that led to you elevating in life yourself. What was that discovery that you encountered?
Well, it was let's see how to describe it. So I was living in London, and like I'd said, I'd been searching all over, and then I'd went to a workshop with a guy called George Pransky in London. And the way he was talking about our innate nature and how the mind works, there was something in what he was saying that then led me to read a couple of books. It led me to kind of start to see how my mind works. And I couldn't even put my finger on it at the beginning, but there was something inside of me that felt like there was truth, and that felt like that it was a relief, that I'd been looking in the wrong direction to find my peace and well-being. I thought that my peace and well-being lied in something that I needed to do, or there was something I needed to get that I didn't have. And then when I realized, oh, I'm constantly looking in the direction of what's wrong with me. But actually, when I turn my attention on looking in the direction of what's actually right and what's working and what I've got, the source of my experience and how we're creating reality, and even how I experience my feelings, there was something in that just felt true on a level that I hadn't experienced before. And so I started exploring it more, and then went to the One Thought Institute in London, and then that's when I got my opportunity to start to volunteer and work in prison, which has then now led to where we are now.
Mm-hmm. So I want to get clear on this understanding, that you mentioned. So what is it? Can you summarize it for me succinctly? What is it that we talk? What is it that allowed you to, elevate your life?
Yeah. Well, I'd say it's two things.
Mhm.
And they're two things that are true for all humans, no matter who you are, where you come from, the culture you come from, the sexual orientation, the color of your skin, everything, all the differences we see, there are two things that are universally true for all humans. One is that no one's broken, no one needs fixing, and that we're all made of the same energy. And that there's an intelligence in that energy that to some people looks spiritual and to some people looks like life force. But it's bringing us to life. It's breathing you and I right now. It's allowing our systems and our body to work without us having to worry about it. It's giving us insights. It gives us our ability to, experience life. It's the same energy that is, changing the seasons and allowing the sun to rise. However you want to call it, there's something that's you and I are made of the same energy, and there's an intelligence in it. So it can't be broken, and it's not man-made, and it can't be marred by man. Second thing is that you and I are both experiencing life through thought every moment of the day. That we're not experiencing the outside world, we're experiencing our mind. So when I realized that my moment-to-moment experience was coming through thought and life wasn't coming at me, not disregarding the fact that life happens and there's a reality, there's like a physical reality that's going on. How I perceive it and how I see it moment to moment is going to look different to you. It's going to look different to me. It looks different to us individually on different days. But it's not, my feelings are not a reflection of the world. My feelings are a reflection of my mind. Mm. And so I started to understand that I don't need to be scared of my feelings, mm-hmm. because they're simply information about where my mind's at in the moment. And so when I started to get an experience of that for myself, and I stopped trying to fight the outside world or fix the outside world or fix my feelings, and realized that there was life that was happening through me and the experience was coming from the inside out, that there was a sense of relief that I could let go of the steering wheel.
Hmm. Was it difficult for you to grasp this understanding and to make it a part of your life? Or was this something that came easily for you?
I think both. I think, well, because it's insight-based, I think that's the difference too. It's not an intellectual understanding, because we can have this conversation. You can go, oh, actually, do you know what? That makes sense. Like, I can see that. Like, I have an intellectual understanding that you're right. Like, no one is gonna, see life the same way, because we're looking through different eyes. We're looking through different stories and backgrounds and cultures that they're gonna give us a filter of life from moment to moment, and all the unconscious bias and all the things that we come with that we don't even know we're coming with. Mm-hmm. So, it's like that makes sense, right? But when to actually see it on a deeper level, to really feel, to really integrate it, like insights are necessary for us to sort of see that on a deeper level. So it's like aha moments where something kind of just feels, like just having an insight where you see something like, oh, that just looks true to me. And then some of the old thought starts to fall away. And then, so in those moments, it's like, yeah. So in those moments, like I had a deep insight, just as a little sidetrack, but this is an example of where, okay, I'll give you two examples. One of where something came naturally and it came instantly, in a way. And then other things that have taken time. It's like, when I was first over in America and I had a real insecure day, like, I don't know, it was just, probably more than a day, I can't remember now, but I was like so struggling with the idea of how do I start a business? I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get into prison. I'm rubbish. I can't do this. I can't. everything that it was just one of those, I'm like, oh God, I can't do this. And I wanted to be great. I was working in prison in England, and now fuck, I can't do anything, and blah, blah, blah. And then I heard a voice inside of me that said, there's nothing that you can do in the world that's going to make you any more whole than you already are. Mm. And it came to me from somewhere beyond my own mind. It wasn't an affirmation. It wasn't something that I was trying to tell myself. It came to me as like an insight in a moment where, in that moment, everything that I was thinking just quietened down. And I heard it in a way that I felt it was true. And it's almost like from that moment, Anna, or who I think Anna is kind of was off the hook for needing to say the right thing, or do the right thing, or have the right conversations, or meet the right people, or try and figure out the right things. It's like Anna left the building, and I realized that there was something else, that it's like, oh, my worth and my well-being is not attached in any way to what I do in the world. That's already built in, that's innate. So it took the pressure off me needing to, so that was an example of where it came almost like instantly. And I've never unlearned that. Yeah. I've never unlearned that. But then there can be other things, like my expectations of how people show up, or, like if I'm trying to get hold of someone and they don't text me back or email me. And it's like, I know that everyone has their way of doing life, and people, and I have an expectation. That's like, it's just thought. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Like, and this feeling, don't worry, you're just feeling impatient, like you blah, blah, blah. But it's still, even though I can understand that intellectually, there's sometimes that it still really gets me on it, So, and it's just a small example. It's not like I'm now living in bliss where I've understood my whole mind, and I'm never caught up, and I'm never angry. I'm never, sad. I'm never insecure. I just hold it much lighter than I ever used to. And then that's a sort of a slow burn, okay, where I continue to learn every day, from everyone, and from my own, wisdom, really.
Okay. Understood. Now, look, I want to get closer to where you work now and the people that you work with. But first, I want to say this. From my understanding, that you have been a business coach, and many of these people that you worked with sharing this understanding were professionals. And with your understanding of the nature of mind, I would think that you could do that anywhere in the world today. But yet, Anna, you choose to work in prisons. And with a prison population. So my first question here is, why did you make this choice? Why work with inmates?
Well, to be honest, it never actually felt like a choice. It was just so bizarre. I'd never thought about it before. Like, it wasn't ever on my resume, or wasn't ever on my wish list of what I thought my job was going to be. I was in One Thought, and Jacqueline, who was running an organization called Beyond Recovery, just got this grant to run a research project and run a program in a prison in England, and she needed a volunteer, and my hand just shot up. Like, it was like my arm wasn't even attached to my body. It was just like, I'll do it. And to be fair, like, I'm not actually a businesswoman. Like, I'm really good at pointing other people to what they want to do, and like really bringing that to life. But I never felt myself as a businesswoman. And there was something in me that was like, oh, that sounds like such fun. Like, I just felt like an interesting place to try and create change or elevation or doing something. I thought, wow, that's way more fun than business, and that was like after the fact. But initially my hand just went up, and I got an opportunity to work, work in a prison in England. And as I was learning this for myself, I could say, oh, well, I've already done a lot of work on myself, or I'm not in this kind of situation. So I have this unbelievable privilege where, of course I'm, maybe I'll get I've got more peace of mind generally because I'm not being attacked left, right, and center for racial bias or, my sexual orientation, you can see I'm a white woman, it's like I could make all these reasons why life is, of course, I can maybe understand that more. But what I realized when I was in prison, and you were sitting with a group of men, because that was the prison we were in, all different, cultures, all different humans, like all a whole walk of life in a way, And when they started to hear what was being shared, they started to see their innate health. They started to see their resilience. They realized that they've got through 100% of everything they've got through, and there's something that's allowed them to bounce back and figure life out and rise to the occasion. They've realized that one day they can be really, mad at, their bunkie or, some officer, and the next day doesn't even touch the sides, and they let it go. And some days they feel hopeful and some days they feel hopeless when nothing's really changed, and they start to see for themselves. And so then they realize that their peace isn't coming from the four walls. It is not coming from the surroundings, that peace comes from within. And there was a way that they then could move easier, find solutions to issues. They were lighter, they were more understanding of other people that didn't look like them. They were more connected to the people that they were surrounded by in their community. They came up with ideas of how to help people. And so I was witness to seeing, this is just about life and humans. It's not about, oh, I'm this and that, and of course I haven't had as much this problems and blah, blah, blah. It was actually realizing that no, when people are pointed back to themselves and their own innate health and to understand the mechanics of their own mind, then they're going to see something for themselves where they're going to wake up and recognize that they have more agency in their own life than they thought, that they're standing on more solid ground than they ever thought inside themselves. And that was like the most incredible experience, because I realized no one is broken and no one needs fixing, even though you're sitting in a room with people who've done all sorts of heinous things or shouldn't have been in prison in the first place, but they've had perseverance to be there and try and fight their cases. And the things that people do and their resilience and the perseverance was just mind-boggling. So that was amazing, and I've loved it ever since.
Yeah, I mean, I when I think about a prison and a prison population and just the mechanics of it, that seems to be a very difficult population for anyone to be in as a prisoner or even in employee. So this seems to be an excellent environment to test this understanding that you're sharing, because let's just think about some of the things that landed some people in prison. What can you think of any maybe 2 or 3 things that might have landed someone in prison?
Well, so many things. Well, I mean, let's leave aside people who've been wrongly accused.
Yeah.
Or people, because that's we could have a whole conversation about the system and the carceral system as a whole and how that's broken, right? Let's just keep that aside. But if we're talking about people who are in prison because they've committed a crime and they've caused harm, I'd say, shooting. People have been, shot, like there's gang activity, all over the place. So I'd say shooting. I'd say, drug addiction, which leads to robbery or assault, domestic violence, stabbing, like all the things that we come across. Not that I ever ask, like I never ask anyone why they're in prison, like, but I just know, what people are,
And I think those who are listening or watching this podcast would be able to, just enumerate a few things that might have landed someone in prison. But I would also think, and you tell me, Anna, that there's some prisoners, not only have they committed crimes, but some of them have been victims of crimes themselves, which caused them to act out in a certain way. So, and I say, would you agree with that? Or would that be about true, that some of them, have also been victims?
100%. It's not binary.
Yeah.
Most people who cause harm have at some point in their life received harm, and there's a lot of trauma in their childhood or in their past, which leads people to behave in certain ways. 100%.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. And out of that, now I'm making this up, so bear with me. Out of that, I can only imagine, because of course, I'm a human being too, and I see other human beings wherever I go in the world today. I can imagine that these prisoners, these human beings, have all kinds of stories going on in their heads. Stories of what happened to them, stories of what they did to other people, stories of, their experience with depression, anxiety, panic. And I'm just wondering about the efficacy, and we'll dig deeper in what you share in a moment, but I'm just wondering about the efficacy of what you share to help them, come to terms with their own lives. So can you talk with us about this? Can you share with us, for example, any stories of these inmates and how they, how they learn to deal, how they learn to appreciate life from another perspective?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the questions you're asking. You've done this before. Good. There's so many stories. One, and I'm just gonna take a broad just view of of what I've seen. This is what I've seen for myself in this work, is that people are doing the best they can with the state of mind they have in the moment, with what's accessible to them in the moment. So it's understandable. To me, people's behavior is a reflection of the craziness in their mind or the peace in their mind. Like, people's behavior is a reflection of their state of mind. And so I can honestly say that most people are in prison because they reacted to a feeling, or they're trying to escape an uncomfortable feeling. Now that makes it very, very simple. But it's actually true, because rage and anger and jealousy and grief, all the addiction of then kind of being in a cycle of addiction and trying to relieve yourself of really uncomfortable feelings. They're there because they're trying to relieve themselves of feelings, or they were trying to escape an uncomfortable feeling or react to a feeling. And so you realize that when people start to understand the source of their own feelings, and they start to realize that their feelings aren't a reflection of themselves or the outside world, it's just information about where your mind's at, then there's a way that we can react less to our feelings. It's totally natural for people to be angry. Like, it's totally natural to people to feel sadness and grief and anxiety and stress. Like, that's part of the human experience. Yeah. But if I think that means something about me, I'm going to respond in a way that because it looks like the outside world is the cause of this, or my relief is going to come from something outside of me. So as people start to understand, and then start to do better because they react less, or they're in more of a peace of mind, or they feel more love and understanding for themselves and others, then they have a lot more understanding for how someone else behaves. Yeah. So trauma that comes from we've got one of our staff members who had an awful relationship with his father, and and there was it sounded like there was a lot of abuse and trauma that early on in life. But I think as he started to understand his own mind, he realized that his dad was only operating at the capacity in which he knew how. Now, that doesn't excuse him, but it somehow allows the blame and the holding on to resentment and grudging. It doesn't make sense to him anymore to hold on to grief or to anger and to resentment, even after he's died. He was just like, you wait till we're gonna like duke this out. And then now he's realizing, you know what, it doesn't make any sense for me to hold on to this. And so in a roundabout way, in terms of people coming to terms with their past or recognizing trauma, but also, we're living in a world which is unbelievably unjust. Mm-hmm. There's systemic racism in this, well, I'm gonna say this, just this country, but it's everywhere, where it can, people's minds, a reflection of what they've learned from their parents, or what they've learned from their people, or what they've learned from their peers. And so even that, like we've had, like white supremacists in a room where they've operated in a way that's horrible, right? That causes violence, causes all sorts of, things. But then when they start to realize that the thought that has been running them isn't true, it's just a reflection of what they picked up along the way and they just imbued and believed. But actually they wake up to the nature of our common humanity. Then they see that we're all the same underneath these vehicles that we're living in, and that they can connect with people that they've never been able to connect with. There's so much forgiveness and so much connection and understanding about the human experience, where people who look very different can go, oh, I know what it feels like to feel, betrayed. I know what it feels like to feel anger at this whole system. I know what it feels like to feel hopeless, because they're human emotions. And so people start to see where their intersection comes and how they relate to each other. And so then so much of the noise and so much of the crap starts to fall away, and they find peace within themselves, which allows them to step into the world and to find solutions and to be part of the solution, rather than continue to unknowingly or innocently be part of the problem of reacting and anger and frustration and I don't know if that was answered your question, but I felt like I went on a ramble then.
Yeah, no, that's great, because what you remind me of is that every human being, whenever we encounter another human being, have the opportunity to recognize that there goes another human being. And that human being may have thoughts or may have all kinds of stuff. So that's what I got for that. But let me dig a little deeper here. I did a little bit of research in preparation for this. And I know that the Insight Alliance offers various, let's call them curriculum or courses. And one of them is the Insight to Well-Being. We've been talking about this generally, but I want you to focus on this course for me, this program, the Insight to Well-Being. What is it? Where do you offer it? And of course, how do people in prison respond to it? The Insight to Well-Being.
Yeah, it's well, we created a curriculum that is a 10-week program. Mm-hmm. So the way we run it in prison, and also mostly out in the community, we can do it different. We can adapt it out here. But it runs as like 2 hours a week for 10 weeks, based on this understanding of the mind. So it's very, very simple. Like there's no homework, there's nothing to write down, there's nothing to remember, there's no tests. Really, it's about being in relationship with one another. A safe space is created with the people in the room where we're exploring the mind. We're exploring and what's behind the mind that's fueling us. What is this? This life force, our spiritual nature that is everything and everyone, that there's a connection between us. And so we start to really explore how we experience life, how we're connected, but also how we're living in separate realities, how the labels that we live in can kind of create a filter that then limits us in how we experience life. We can look at how the cycle of addiction is about the kind of, misunderstanding of the innocent misunderstanding of the mind, and how we get caught up in that cycle. We start to really explore connected listening, of how am I really listening when someone's talking, or am I listening to my own thoughts in my head about what I think someone else is saying? And you start to gain awareness around, am I listening with an open mind? Am I listening with curiosity? Or I'm listening with a whole bunch of unconscious bias and judgment that is going to get in the way of me even being able to hear you? Or hear myself? Like, what's the noise that I've got in my own mind when I'm trying to listen to my own wisdom? Oh yeah, I can't do that. Oh no, I'm no good at that. Oh yeah, I just this, I'm that person, I'm a felon, I'm a criminal, I'm an addict, I'm all the things that get in our own way. Understanding, the nature of thought, the nature of feelings, how they're not coming from the outside world, how they're coming through us as a sensation, as a, it's like we just explore what's going on inside us, and how we're the sort of limitless possibilities beyond our own our own ideas of who we are. So it's like a 10-week program that just we have fun kind of exploring it together, and everyone learns from everyone, because I'm not coming in as an expert, because we're not sharing with anyone anything that they don't already know.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. And so how have your participants responded to this curriculum?
Well, they many of them, when they release from prison, they get out, they're addiction free, they're crime free, they're connected back with their kids, they're working, they're living a life that doesn't involve like continuing to repeat the cycles of incarceration and recidivism. It's like people think that that's just what's going to happen because they're a criminal, and that's what they or they're stuck in a certain life because nothing else is available to them, and so they start to see beyond their own limitations, and then recognize the possibilities out there. And obviously we support people with our re-entry services and continued support and continued learning, and so people are out. We employ 70% of our staff has been previously incarcerated, and they're literally, when I say they, I'm talking about us, right? Because they're humans exactly like us that got caught up in a situation, sometimes fairly, sometimes very unfairly. But you can move beyond it, and any one of us can live a life of possibility and live a life that they wanted to live. So lots of amazing, there's lots of amazing people, amazing, examples of people, living prison-free lives and doing really, really well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I could, just listening to you, I could just imagine that, many institutions, not just prisons, could benefit. I mean, I would take this course really, if it was available to me. So so what I'm asking, if a church or synagogue or mosque or community center wanted access to that curriculum, could they get it? Or is this just for Inside Alliance?
No, so I mean, this curriculum is really, we're using it in the setting of the carceral system, or anyone affected by the criminal punishment system, whatever you want to call it. But anyone can be in prison in their own mind. They don't need to be in an institution. It's like anyone can get caught up, right? So it's for anybody. I mean, we sell our curriculum. And we run trainings so other people can have access to it. We do, our mission is very much around, sort of ending recidivism and around the carceral system. And so the people we work with, whether it's the federal court system, whether it's federal reentry services, whether it's, addiction, whether it's foster care, they're all linked to the pipeline to prison, so we work with a wider variety of people, but on our website, there's ways to kind of get access with. Anyone who wants to find freedom in their own mind and find sort of the limitless potential. It's not secret.
Okay. So I will put, with your permission, the link to the Inside Alliance in the description, and if people want to get in contact with you, they can reach out. How about that?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So a couple of more things before we finish up here. You mentioned a couple of names and organizations that I just want you to share with us what they are and who they were. One was the name George Pransky. Who is that?
Well, George Pransky is, I'm going to probably get this wrong, so anyone listening, I'd say is a long-time psychologist, psychotherapist who met up with, came across a guy called Sid Banks many years ago, who then started to share the principles, the three principles, this understanding, and then has continued to do that for 40 plus years. And he lives with his wife Linda up in Lacona in Washington. And that was honestly, I haven't done a lot of work with them since, but he was my first person that I listened to, and he was just amazing. It was just really, it hit home. It hit home. So yeah, that's George Pransky. They have their own practice up in Washington.
Okay, and you just mentioned the name Sydney Banks, and many of our listeners or people who watch this, this video will not know that name. Who can you give it just a snapshot of who was that?
Snippet.
Yeah, snippet. I like that word, snippet of it. Yeah.
This is the hardest question. So, well, Sid Banks was a Scottish welder living in Canada. And the way and I'm probably not going to say this right, so anyone listening who, please don't sort of, come at me, but I did this wrong, but, had an enlightenment experience where he saw the nature of the mind, he saw the nature of God, he saw beyond the human form, how we're being experienced moment to moment. And he explained it in a way, he talked about it in the way of mind, consciousness, and thought. Really, it's like how life is, how we're being experienced moment to moment through thought, through consciousness, through universal mind, which is the intelligence of all things. And there was a way that it was very simple, that he wasn't describing anything that wise people and, from the past that hasn't been around since the beginning of time. There was just a simplicity that felt very accessible in a way for people to understand, more about the human experience and therefore learn and find freedom for themselves. And he died in 2009, but many people, especially people in service and psychology and psychotherapy, learned from him and then took their own professions further. And then a lot of them have been my teachers since then. So I never met Sid Banks, but I've watched many videos, and he's just, a beautiful human being.
Okay. So is the Insight Alliance a nonprofit, and can people contribute if they want to?
Absolutely, yes. It is. It's a nonprofit. Yes, a nonprofit that's in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
Of course, anyone is very welcome to contribute. For sure.
All right. So looking back just on the last, year, let's just imagine that you're speaking to your staff and supporters, and you're reporting on your successes and challenges. What are a couple of things that you would say to us? Successes and the kinds of things that remain, challenges that you would like to do better.
Yeah. Well, I'd say successes is we're sitting in a physical office and we have 9 staff members. We have the Insight to Wellbeing team, which is me, and I've got Tamaje Beto Contreras and Mason Seuss, who are my team members. Like, we teach Insight to Wellbeing. We also have Project 180, which is run by Michael Garcia. And that's all our re-entry services. So we help people find jobs, we help people find get into higher education, find housing. We do micro grants. We offer a peer mentorship program. So a lot of our guys that have come out of prison, and women, then become mentors for other people coming out, because navigating the world out here after you've been maybe in prison for 30 years or even a few years, like, life's changing so fast, and how to kind of really get on your feet. So we have a whole mentoring program. And a clothing closet. We have a great, people come out and they don't have anything to wear, so we have a great clothing closet. And then also we're just starting a restorative justice program, working alongside the DA's office, and working with public defenders to actually divert people from the system, that with Measure 11 cases, which is mandatory minimums, between the ages of 18 and 24, so they'd actually be diverted completely from the system. So I'd say those are, like, in successes, it's like we're growing and we're expanding, and people, that we've got on our team and people that we have as our teachers and our volunteers are just so amazing. And we're truly like a diverse kind of group of humans that have a lot of fun. So that's, we laugh a lot, which is absolutely incredible, because, sometimes looking out at the world, if you didn't laugh, you'd cry. So, we enjoy each other and we have fun. I mean, the challenges is just, I'd say, it's so easy to get caught up in you know, working in these systems, these archaic systems, especially the carceral system, you know, from how it was birthed way back when to it now. And it's kind of, sometimes I get so frustrated, and I can get so, you know, sad and just, you know, sort of discouraged by stories that we hear, and trying to kind of figure out how to get people out of situations which you just think are so unfair that you just want to, you know, you just want to kind of, I don't know, raise it to the ground, or I don't know, I wouldn't say that out loud, but, you know, you want to just kind of start again because you're working off something that was so toxic from the beginning. But I know, what I know is, you know, I dip my toe in that, you know, but I know that it's not a good place for me to live, that it's so easy for us to look in the direction of what's not working and the hopelessness of everything. We could look at the world and we go, oh my God, look at the state of this. But, you know, the world doesn't need my worry. The world needs my presence. You know, this community doesn't need my worry. It needs my presence. And so when I'm present, when I'm worrying and pissed off and at the system, I'm not present in my life, and I can't do my job where I'm helping the next person in front of me. So the challenge is like that dance between being in this world, which is sometimes hard to bear, and the humans that just, you know, just get but you know, we could, that's a blur. But then, you know, at the same time staying really present in our lives, to be able to kind of do the work that we need to do to help change the system and to make people's lives better, you know, whoever we are, you know. It's just that's an ongoing challenge, but we're getting there. We're helping change policy and, you know, all the rest of it. So it feels like it's still hopeful. We're really hopeful. You know, there's a lot of good things that are happening.
That's great. Well, it sounds like you have opportunities to use your work to elevate, which means, you know, that you and your team will continue to grow. So Anna, as we come to the end of this interview, is there anything you care to share with us that I haven't asked?
I think you've done an amazing job of asking really good questions. It's been fun. I could carry on talking to you, although I want to ask you questions too. I mean, I don't, you know, honestly, you know, one thing I think, if people are listening to this, is to really, it's for people to learn more and to educate yourselves about, you know, especially the prison system in this country, you know, because we have such a, like, even your question at the beginning, you know, it must be hard, you know, working in prison. And it's like, for whatever reason, it never felt hard to me. It doesn't feel hard to me. I feel like I'm going into a place where I'm meeting myself, I'm meeting humans that are just like me. Wow. And I think as people come in to volunteer with us, they become, you know, they become teachers. All the stories that we have about people in prison, and, you know, the movies and the TV and all the stuff that shows people who are in prison as bad, broken people, is a complete myth. We are, you know, you could have people living next door to you who've spent some time in prison. There is no difference between people in prison and me. The only thing that happened is that they, you know, the behavior or the trauma that they had, or the life experience that they had, that led them to respond in a way, you know, the poverty or the privilege that they either had or they didn't have, which leads people to doing things, or unfairly treated in ways that then, you know, all the things. And I think just education, people actually really educating, you know, themselves on the systems that are in this country that really, you know, disproportionately affect people of color and people in poverty, and that we need to understand more about it, rather than writing them off as just we want to keep them locked up, because they're incredibly beautiful, creative, loving people who actually, you know, are literally no different from you and I. So I just want to make that clear, that my going into prison is like a place where I feel safe, I feel connected to people, I feel like we laugh a lot, people who want to do better, people who want to like serve their community, people who want to live, you know, happy, you know, productive, prison-free lives. But people make mistakes, we all make mistakes, and we're responding to life the best we know how, and when we know better, we do better.
Yeah.
You know, it's just true for all of us. So I think that's the only other thing that I'd like to say.
And that's fantastic. Well, Anna Debenham, thank you so much for the privilege of sitting with you today for this interview. So thank you.
It's been my pleasure. I really,
Okay.
really enjoyed it, Stephen. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Okay. You've been listening to the Possibility Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton. Our guest today has been Anna Debenham, the founder of the Insight Alliance. Thank you for watching or listening to this podcast.